chat. Little swapperoo. Let's go.
We have the good share. What's up, guys? Thanks again, Don, for the fire sauce you've been dropping. I want to go back real quick to this slide right here. Notice, I put this in the chat too. Notice how these bills, any bills you have, doesn't matter if it's US, doesn't matter if it's euros, Canadian dollars, whatever. It says Federal Reserve Note. Okay, it doesn't say United States Treasury. It says Federal Reserve. And I want you guys to understand that this is a private corporation. If you look in a phone book, United States phone book, there's white pages and there's yellow pages, right? There's government agencies and there's private corporations. If you look up Federal Reserve, they're not under federal agencies. They're a private agency, a private corporation. And on this screen right here, let me stop moving the mouse so that it doesn't cover that up. I hate when it does that, fam. But notice the shareholders. Okay, notice the shareholders of the central bank. Okay, so what I want you guys to understand, let me go back to, where's Thrive? Do you still have Thrive?
I think I closed the link.
It's right here. I got it. Where's that one pyramid? Hold on. Okay, right here, right? So notice how these banks right here, right? These are the same institutions that have been through scam number one, stealing gold from the people through fractional reserve banking. With that money that they're stealing, they were able to lobby and have created a private bank where they were able to issue the fiat currency of the United States and ultimately of all the other nations in the world as well. So when we go back to this slide right here, okay, the seigniorage, this profit that I said in this slide, the government earns, right? The profit that the government earns by essentially taking a worthless piece of paper and adding $99.99 of value to it every time they print it, right? It's not actually the government that's making that profit. It's those criminal bankers who are already scamming you through fractional reserve. That wasn't enough for them. They wanted more power. They wanted more control. It wasn't enough to just, rob people's savings. If you think about anytime there's been a bank run around the world, anytime people have lined up outside the bank and there simply hasn't been enough money for everyone to withdraw their accounts, when people's life savings evaporated in a week or a couple of days, they are the same people that are earning this $100 of profit every time they mint new coins, every time they mint new money, right? I want you guys to understand it's not the government that benefits from this fiat currency. It's counterfeit money. When we do it, it's illegal. You go to jail for a long time for counterfeit money. When they do it, no one bats an eye. Right? No one really thinks about where their money is actually coming from. Okay. And what I want you guys to understand is how this is actually working. Okay. So here you have the Treasury, okay, or the government. And here is the Federal Reserve, right? We know who that is. That's the private banks. Okay. What happens is the government needs to borrow money, right? We said before that they thought World War II was only going to last a couple months because, there simply wasn't enough money to fund that war. That's not the case, right? The government is essentially, think of this as the government's credit card, okay? When they want to spend more money than they're earning, right? Let's say, okay, let's put it this way. The government is one person, and that one person, their source of income, their job, think of that as everyone paying their taxes, right? Now, for one, if it was one single person and you had a job and let's say you earned 100,000 a year, right? Just to make the math easy. If you're earning 100,000 a year, theoretically, you should only be able to spend $100,000 per year, right? Unless you have a credit card. And if you have a credit card and your limit is, let's say 50K, now instead of spending 100,000, you're able to spend 150,000. Right? That's essentially what's happening with the government on a large, $1 trillion scale with a T, trillion, right? they don't have enough money to pay for the wars, the defense budget, all the welfare programs, not to mention all the money they've printed with the COVID crisis and everything like that. All this money is not coming through your taxes. It's coming from their, quote unquote, credit card. Okay. And so what happens is, to pay for this, to get money from the Federal Reserve, they issue what's called a bond, or a treasury note, or a treasury bill. And this is basically a piece of paper that says, I owe you, I promise to pay you back later. Okay, the government issues that official IOU. The Federal Reserve, they buy this. Remember, they create money out of thin air every time that they, a $100 bill is created, every time a $5 bill is created, they're earning that profit. So with that money, they are able to buy these bonds, and they write a check, right? This one right here, consider that like a check. They write a check, the check gets cashed at the bank, and then money goes to the treasury. So this is how the government is able to pay for all those programs that they're running, despite only earning, a small fraction of that through your taxes. And a really good illustration that I always like to pull up is the US debt clock. Okay, we can see right here, there's a bunch of numbers on here. The main ones I want you to pay attention to, obviously the total national debt, $27.7 trillion.
That's gone up a lot.
Okay.
Holy.
Fun fact, if you were to start counting as fast as you could, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if you were to start the moment you were born, you probably wouldn't even reach 1 billion. Okay. We have 1,000 times that. We have actually 27,000 times that. Right? That's how much debt there is right now that the United States owes. That's how much is on their credit card. Okay. Every time that they max out their credit card, rather than paying back what they owe, they simply ask the credit card company, hey, could I get a higher limit? Right. And that's been going on since they got the credit card, quote unquote, back in 1913, over 100 years of not paying back their credit card bill. Right. That's essentially what's happening here. So if you look at the tax revenue right here, 3 trillion, right? 3.5, let's call it this number right here. That's how much they're actually earning. That's like their job income. And now let's look at their spending, right? The official spending is 6.6. So that's almost double, right? If the United States government was one person, that person would basically be spending, let's call it $1.80 for every single dollar they're earning, right? And this is why we're so far indebted. And if you look around the world, I remember when I was in high school, I had a teacher show us this website, and a kid put up their hand and they said, okay, well, if the United States is in that much debt, and China and Germany and all these other countries are also in so much debt, how is it possible that all these countries are that far in debt? And at the time, my teachers told us that, oh, it's just that these countries all owe each other. But that doesn't make sense. There's no one in the positives. They're all indebted. They all owe trillions of dollars. Some of them only billions, right? But the fact is, they all owe trillions of dollars. And this is why the government is the way it is. This is why there's so much corruption. This is why, if you heard in the video clip where you were saying, if we had a gold standard, it would constrain their spending. It would kind of tie the politicians back to reality. When we have a system like this, where, imagine if you had a person who had a credit card that, every time they max out the credit card, they could just increase the limit, and they're never held responsible for all that spending that they've done, right? It would be a total disaster. They would just be able to buy whatever they wanted and never be responsible for that, right? And if you think about all the poverty in the world, all the wars around the world, this is literally the source of it. It's following the money, right? It's so important to follow the money and to understand the source of why there's so much corruption and inequality in the world. It really comes down to this, scam number 2. Okay. The Federal Reserve, essentially what's happening is, like I said, the Treasury borrows money from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve gives money back to the Treasury. And then that money that the Treasury, or the government gets, they spend it. You know, they're paying contractors, they're paying corporations, they're paying their government employees. What happens when all those people get paid is the money goes back right into the same banking system. And as we explained in scam number one, but Don was explaining, that Thrive was explaining with fractional reserve lending, it just creates more and more and more debt. So thinking back to that first question, that first slide of questions that we had, where does money come from? About 90% of the money is coming from here, from the fractional reserve lending. And the other, 5-10% of the money is coming from here, from the United States, basically spending like there's no tomorrow, maxing out their credit card, and then instead of paying it back, just borrowing even more money. And this picture right here, it pretty much sums it up, right? So that's the Federal Reserve System. If there are any questions, if you're unsure about how this works, if you want more information, I would recommend this documentary right here. It's a little bit hard to find it. I'll see if I can find it, but I might not be able to.
That's a hard one to find still.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's a little bit easier now. I think is this the Corbett report? Yep, this is it. Okay, so there it is right there. This is a documentary. It's called the Corbett Report. Let me make sure it sends to everybody. Okay, the guy that made it, it's called the Corbett Report. He also has one about oil corporations. So Corbett Report, oil. This is another one that I would highly, highly recommend as well. How big oil conquered the world. Okay, I'm not going to get into that on this call. That could be a whole nother topic for another day, right? But there's, a little bit of homework for you guys. If you want to learn more about the financial system, how it got to the point it is right now, this documentary over here is good too. It's a little bit longer. But, this one right here, how big oil conquered the world, this will really put into perspective how certain families, how certain corporations basically got a monopoly on steel, on oil, on money itself, on gold. They use slave labor to get rich for centuries, and they're still in power. They still control most of the world's resources and most of the money in the world. And the majority of people live in this illusion that we have freedom, that we have, capitalism, we have free markets. It couldn't be farther from the truth, guys. And that's why we're doing these calls, is again to raise awareness and expose kind of the scams that have been going on here, right? So breaking down a timeline, I know might be a little bit of confusion about how this happened, right? This is a timeline I was talking about earlier. Originally, we actually did use gold and silver as money, right? In the United States Constitution, it says nothing other than gold and silver can be used as money, right? We then started transitioning into paper dollars. These weren't actually money, right? They represented the money, representative money. Then we had the Federal Reserve created in 1913. We then started printing more of these paper dollars than there actually was gold. Okay. And that's when the problem started. That is when, the United States started taking on more and more and more debt, right? That's when, if this was a single person, 1913 would have been the year that person got their first credit card. Okay. And the consequences of them maxing out their credit card were felt in the 1920s going into the 30s when we went into the Great Depression. Okay, that was the first kind of reality check. And a lot of innocent people lost their life savings in that event, right? The response to that event, rather than fixing the problem, was they simply made gold ownership illegal. They forced everybody to hand over their gold and silver coins to the government. And then finally in 1971, they temporarily ended the gold standard completely. And since then, remember that website, what WTF happened in 1971? You can go and look at the charts. You can see the impact it's had on the world, on crime rates, on finance, on, access to opportunities. it's been devastating, right? And we're still feeling the consequences of these decisions today, decades or even a century later. Okay. So this brings me to scam number 3, right? Executive Order 6102. And basically what this is, like I said, all persons are required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve Bank. This was an executive order made by the president, President Roosevelt, who, by the way, 33rd degree Freemason, okay? He forced all the American citizens to hand over their gold. Remember, at this point in time, and still today, it says in the Constitution of the United States that the only thing that can be used as as money is gold and silver. This is literally the president forcing all the people to hand over the real money, and in exchange, we've been left with, this. I got a US dollar in my wallet just, for this, right? We're left with this worthless paper, right? It literally even has that symbol on it, these Masonic symbols. This is what the people are left with. And the real wealth of the world, the real money, all went over to the Federal Reserve. Okay, so this was scam number 3. Scam number 4 is what we call the Bretton Woods system. Okay, and I got a little video clip here. This is from the Gold documentary. I'm gonna pull this up, and it's actually really interesting. Give me 1 second to find where it is. 35. Okay, hold on. Don, you're checking the chat?
Yep.
Right there. Okay, so here's a little video clip explaining this scam number 4. This is more to do with Europe than it is the United States.
Now or not.
Alongside conspiracy theories and stories of manipulation, gold's history is filled with wonderful illustrations of how much it means to mankind, the extraordinary importance placed on protecting it, and the sometimes deadly lengths people will go to in order to possess it.
In September 1939, as the German army advanced towards Britain, the government decreed that every person living in the United Kingdom register their gold with the Royal Treasury. Just weeks later, on the 7th of October 1939, HMS Emerald set sail from Plymouth in Great Britain for Halifax, Nova Scotia. The reason? Her hull contained millions of pounds of gold bullion, bound for the USA to pay for American war materials. 12 months later, with the war going badly for the Allies and the battle for the North Atlantic at its fiercest, Prime Minister Winston Churchill used emergency wartime powers to seize the gold that the citizens of the UK had been forced to declare the previous year. The gold was moved to the port of Greenock in Scotland in secret, reloaded onto HMS Emerald, and then dispatched to Canada, so if the British were to be overrun by the advancing Nazi forces, they would still have the means to continue the fight. 1 week later, another convoy set off on the same route, this time carrying $1.7 billion of gold. Today, that gold will be worth over $29 billion. In all, almost $30 billion of gold in today's money was shipped thousands of miles in treacherous seas and through a gauntlet of U-boats without a single ounce being lost. It was the single greatest and perhaps most dangerous movement of wealth in history.
Stories such as the...
Okay, I think I'm unmuted yet. So that kind of explains scam number 4. So we've already had, getting ahead of myself. We've already had all the gold confiscated from basically, anyone that had a bank account in the United States. There's a good chance they lost their wealth in the Great Depression. Whatever was left over was confiscated by President Roosevelt in 1933. Then we have World War II. All the gold of the citizens of Europe, right, the UK and France, was then confiscated by their Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, moved over to America. And then following World War II, since all the gold not all the gold, but since the majority of the world's gold is now in the possession of the Federal Reserve through scams 1 through 4, we now have this system that they decided, they all gathered, had this meeting, this big conference, and they decided, what are we going to do about the money now? This is what they decided. This image pretty much summarizes it. Okay, 1 ounce of gold they decided was worth $35, and all other currencies were to be measured in US dollars. All other debts were to be settled in USD. Okay, so since the United States had the majority of the world's gold, they decided to use the US dollar as the base currency. This is why when you trade Forex, whenever we talk about the major pairs, they're always USD pairs. This is why the US dollar is used around the world to settle transactions that are related to gold, related to oil, related to settling trade imbalances and stuff like that. That's why the United States dollar is used so much. Okay, is because of this decision right here. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Then, this would have been back in the 1940s, right after World War II. Then we had, during the presidency of John F. Kennedy, right? There's another documentary that, I know Vargas has encouraged a lot of people to watch the, what's it called? Everything is a Rich Man's Trip, right? If you guys have seen that, you'll kind of know this as well. But 1964 to 65, at this point in time, the majority of the coins in the United States, they still had a little bit of silver content in them. Okay, so it wasn't enough that they stole all the people's savings accounts. It wasn't enough that they stole the gold of other nations around the world. Now they wanted to take the silver that was in circulation within the United States, and they wanted that too. Okay, and the way they did this was by debasing the actual coins. Okay, so 1964, this was the last year where they had 90% silver content in the coins themselves, in the quarters, in the half dollar, in the dime, whatever. And then they switched over to a blend of copper and nickel, which we had that image earlier on in the presentation, kind of explaining that. Don, can you pass the box thing?
Yes, sir. I already got the coins out actually.
Oh, okay. So I have these are from Canada. I'm not a US. I don't live in the United States. It's the best I can do, right? But I have here from Canada. This is a quarter. The lighting's really bad in here. I don't know if you guys can actually see that.
It's actually not bad.
Can they see the date on it?
Nah. not
Okay.
the date.
1965. Okay, this is actually a 1965 Canadian quarter. This is like a, I don't know, 2005. Okay. Now I want you guys to listen. I'm gonna drop them on the desk, and I want you guys to listen to the difference in the sound it makes. Okay, so the coin from 2005, and now the coin from 1965. Okay, drop a number, drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear the difference. Ready? You can hear how much heavier that 1965 quarter sounds, right? You can literally hear the difference in the coin purity. Okay, so all the coins pre-1965. The Federal Reserve confiscated all that silver. They own all that silver, and they were able to remint new coins. And I'm going to go back somewhere in here. We have that slide right there. Okay, they did this except with silver. Okay, that's what they did with all the coins that we actually have in circulation. And now with the coronavirus crisis, they don't want anyone using cash, supposedly because it spreads germs. If you've been following along, I'm sure you can read between the lines and figure out where they're going with that one, right? They are confiscating pretty much all the real money, and they're leaving everyone else with paper or numbers on a screen, which ultimately don't really have any intrinsic value. Okay. There's an article there. I'm not going to pull it up just to save time. Scam number 6. This is what Don was talking about earlier when they officially ended the gold standard. 1971, President Nixon cut the tie between the dollar and gold, and he did this in 1971, supposedly temporarily, right? Our colleague, well, I don't know him personally, but James Rickards was saying he knows 2 of the 5 people, spoke with 2 of those people that were there at that meeting, and the consensus was it was going to be a temporary cut, and they were going to go back onto a gold standard. But obviously that hasn't happened, right? And since they've done this, what it's allowed them to do is to print as much money as they would like to. Actually, I think I will go into that website, What Happened in 1971, just really quick. I want to show you guys the consequences of that decision. Why isn't it letting me? Okay, hold up. Copy. My bad, guys. Give me a sec. Okay. So just really quickly, you can see real wages and trade policies, real GDP after 1971 kind of tapered off, whereas, the GDP kind of continued along the same trajectory. Basically, the GDP on paper has stayed the same, but the real wages of the people kind of flattened out. Okay. Income gains from the 95th percentile versus the average family. You can see the middle class versus the upper class. The gap is widening over time. Okay. Income growth, kind of the same thing. Bottom 90% versus the top 1%. 50-year decline in wages, real wages. Okay. Top 1% versus bottom 90%. Again, the gap is growing. Income inequality, I guess that's like, yeah, you can see like more income inequality. GDP per capita, median male income, right? And female income, the same thing. What's this one? Income inequality. You can see how much that's been growing, right? Cost of living, 1971, new house, $25,000. Average income, 10. Okay, look at this. Look at the numbers, right? The average income, 10,000. The price of a new house, 25. Think about what it is now. The average income is, what is it like? What would you say, Don? Like
say 30, 40.
60?
Oh, I guess it, yeah, 30, 40 USD.
Okay, let's call it 50. And what's a house? Like $500,000 now? It's so unaffordable. Look at the prices of food, bacon, eggs, hamburgers, inflation rate. Look at this. You can see there was a little bit of inflation up in here leading up to the decision. Ever since 1971, the inflation rate has skyrocketed. And this is a tax on basically everybody that everyone has to pay. It's almost impossible to save up money. You can't just put money in your bank account and have it grow over time, because inflation will eat away all your savings, right? Look at the consumer price index. It's a level of inflation, right? It's pretty much the same for hundreds of years. Then we have 1913 and 1971, okay? The cost of electricity, what's that one? Oh, look at this. Gold reserves and the gold price. I haven't seen some of these before, right? But you can see every single chart. Just look at the number of hyperinflations around the world since 1971, okay? Currency crashes after 1971. We had this one literally in the slideshow already. Number of countries with a banking crisis after 1971. Okay, this one would have been the Great Depression right here. Federal debt.
Yeah, you got to pull up that. Yeah, there it is. The one. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's pretty cracked right here. What's this one again? National debt, right? Again, I compared it to having a credit card that you never pay off. You just keep maxing it out and getting a limit increase. Federal debt. WTF, I'm dead. Trade surplus, right? S&P ratio. Whoa, that's kind of crazy. working hours to buy the S&P. Wow, that's actually a really good, like a good comparison. How many hours does it take for me to put in work to be able to buy one share of the S&P? And you can see it would have taken you about 30 hours. Okay, so it's about let's call it about a week's pay up until here. You could afford to buy the S&P 500 with a week's pay. Now it's how many weeks is 126? 6 weeks? Yeah, that's crazy.
Or 3.
Personal savings rate declined a whole lot there. So, it's almost impossible to save up any real wealth. Remember the definition of money, guys. Number 3, must keep its value over time. You must be able to save up with it, right? We can't use food for money, because if you saved up all your food from the year, all your harvest, it would eventually go bad and you would lose your wealth. It's the same thing with fiat currency, right? It's losing value over time faster than you can earn it, faster than you can save it up, right? So that was scam number 6. Continuing on, number 7. This one, a lot of people don't consider this, but for other countries around the world, they've been encouraged, rather than investing in gold, to buy United States treasuries instead, because they are as good as gold, but they also pay the holder interest. Okay, so rather than foreign countries investing in gold, they've been influenced into buying United States debt. Okay, so that's even more money that the Federal Reserve is earning, even more gold that they're able to, this is gold that would otherwise be spread around other countries, but it's consolidated in their hands, right? Number 8, the paper gold market. This one's really interesting too. A lot of people don't consider this, but I was watching that gold documentary. They said a declassified document from 1974. It was the United States Embassy in London. They revealed that the creation of a large paper gold market, paper gold meaning when you look on TradingView and you're trading XAU USD, that's paper gold. Buying a gold stock or a gold ETF rather than holding the physical gold, that would be considered paper gold. Okay. And a large paper gold market, it satisfies demand that would otherwise go to real physical gold. So a quote that they use in the documentary is, people know the price of everything, but the value of nothing.
Bar.
Okay.
Fucking bar.
Yeah, right. So one thing that I'm going to stop moving the mouse again. One thing that I really took away from that documentary is the price of gold is the cost of actually physically putting a bar in my hand. The gold price, pardon me, is the supply and demand of the so-called paper gold that you're trading on TradingView, or if you invest in gold ETFs or anything along those lines, mining stocks, anything that says gold, but it's not actually physical gold, that's considered paper gold. Okay. And by getting people to invest in that rather than the real physical thing, it's taking away a lot of the money that would otherwise go into physical gold. Can you pass that notebook?
Yes, sir.
There's another, I just remembered one thing. So there's a quote I wrote down in here. One of the people in the documentary, he said, okay, number 1, there's a concentrated PR campaign, public relations campaign against gold by central banks. And one of the people they interviewed in this documentary, he said, I could sell 60 tons of paper gold with a phone call, right? In other words, the gold price that you see on TradingView, it's heavily, heavily manipulated by central banks, by foreign, it says in here, China is the #1 suspect in that manipulation. China, by the way, actually, I think I wrote that down too. Let me see if I can find it in here. China has bought more than the annual production of gold for the last 12 years.
Sheesh.
Okay.
Hodl.
Yeah, China's been hodling for the last 12 years, right? Same with Russia. Russia's been buying a lot of gold as well. So it makes you wonder, why Why is it that they're putting so much effort? Why do they really, really not want us, the common people? Why did our ancestors, here's a good question for all the people that live in America. Why did your ancestors fight the Revolutionary War, fight for their lives, fight for their freedom, to put in the Constitution? One of the first things they wrote in the Constitution: no thing other than gold or silver shall be used as a payment in tender of debts. It's right there. It's, I believe, Article 1, Section 10. One of the first 10 things they put in the Constitution: we need to have gold and silver as money, nothing else, right? We're not falling for that scam again, right? And 100, 200 years later, the founding fathers are probably rolling in their grave, looking at the system that we have today, and the people that think they have their freedom, but they're having to work 40 hours a week just to make ends meet, right? Think about this: in the 1950s and the right after World War II, people were able to, you would have, like, typically the man would work a 9 to 5 job, maybe like 40 hours a week, and the wife would stay at home with the kids. The wife never had to go to work and put in 40 hours a week. There was enough wealth for the average family, for the average person, where only one person in the family needed to go to work for 40 hours a week, and they had enough money to buy a nice car, a nice house, to have groceries, to afford to send their kids to a nice college, have opportunity, access to opportunity, live in a nice neighborhood, time for leisure, time for recreation. Now you look at the world today, people are having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to scrape by. You know what I mean? The minimum wage, just like, so many people are on minimum wage. So many people don't have enough money. There's no opportunity. The price of college is through the roof. The price of housing is through the roof. The price of owning a car is through the roof, right? This system is very, very, very manipulated. And these are this is what's happened over time. These scams that I'm laying out, this is why the world is basically going to hell in a handcart. You know what I mean? And this is why I want to educate people against these scams that are going on, and to encourage people to fight for their freedom, to spread this information, get invested in actual real money. You know what I mean? And continuing with the scams, government bailouts, number 9, right? Think of the 2008 financial crisis. Again, a lot of people lost a lot of their savings when the stock market crashed. They lost a lot of their savings when their banks were failing. What did they do? Rather than helping the people that the government is supposed to represent, they helped out the people. They helped out the corporations rather than the people, right? They bailed out the corporations. They bailed out Ford. They bailed out GM. They bailed out the banks, right? It's literally because these institutions that print all the money, those institutions exist to serve the needs of these corporations and banks, not the people, right? That's the system we have in place today. We have a government that represents these corporations more than it represents the people that it's supposed to be representing. And, then scam number 10, I'm not going to go too much into this just to save us some more time, but over $2 trillion has been printed. This is an old statistic. Don, what's the number again? Is it 26%?
It's upwards of 30.
So more than 30% of all the United States dollars that have ever been printed were printed in the last year. Okay, think about that for a second. This money that they're printing, and people are happy to get a bailout from their government. People are happy to get a stimulus check from their government. Like, realize that's your money that they're giving back to you. The government's money comes from our taxes, right? That's basically them stealing our money for generations to hand us back, a tiny fraction, less than 1% of what they've stolen from us, just so that we can continue scraping by, right? It's a huge scam, right? And I've outlaid 10 different scams. Hopefully, if we go back all the way to the beginning of the presentation here, hopefully we're starting to answer a lot of these questions. And I hope the answer that you had in your head at the beginning of this call is a lot different than it is now. I hope you're able to answer these questions and gain a better understanding of our financial system, who controls it, why is gold and silver so important, where is our money coming from, you know, the answer to all of these questions, right? The last thing I want to touch on is what would happen if we were to revalue how much gold is worth. I said before, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing, right? If we were to take the current money supply and divide that by the current gold supply, we would get the true value of gold, okay? Not the price you see on TradingView, not the price of paper gold, okay? The true value of gold. How valuable would an ounce of gold be if we went back to following the Constitution, if the average person had gold in their bank account, had gold at home under their mattress or whatever, rather than worthless paper that's losing value every single day? If we had the proper system that the founding fathers of America intended for us to have, how much value would we place on an ounce of gold? And experts today, such as, you know, Jim Rickards, such as the people in that documentary and others, are predicting anywhere between $20,000 to $100,000 per ounce in today's prices, in today's dollars. Okay, so, you know, I don't mean to bum you guys out with all this history and what, you know, with this reality check in here. I want you guys to understand that this is a great time to be alive. This is a huge opportunity for us to, you know, basically, if you guys have seen Fall Cabal, you know what I'm talking about, right? This is a huge opportunity where we can, you know, kick these guys out of the system, take down this broken system, and establish the system that, you know, our founding fathers of America intended for the people to have, a true system of freedom, of capitalism, where we actually have stable money that doesn't lose value over time, where people can actually save up, where, you know, the prices of housing and the price of cars and college and stuff like that is actually sustainable, where people can earn a decent wage and not have to slave away for, you know, 60 hours a week or whatever it is just to scrape by, right? So this is a huge opportunity. This is why I've been, you know, encouraging people for the last, I would say, like 2 years now, encouraging people to invest in gold and also in silver. One last thing I want to touch on is a concept called the gold to silver ratio. And this ratio, basically what this means is, if I have 1 ounce of gold and I want to trade it for silver, how many ounces of silver do I get for that 1 ounce of gold? And looking all the way back throughout history, it was around 16, current mineable supplies around 9. Okay, so it's been around 1 to 15. I'm just going to use 15 for, you know, a reasonable estimate of what it should be. Meaning, if I have 1 ounce of gold, I should be able to buy 15 ounces of silver with it. And right now, silver is undervalued compared to gold, and gold is undervalued compared to everything else, right? So if we look on TradingView, there's a thing you can type in called, I believe if you just type in gold, silver. Yeah, if you type in gold, silver, it'll bring up the gold to silver ratio. And it only goes back to like 1997, I guess. But you can see right now, the gold to silver ratio is sitting at around 1 to 70. Okay, and historically, it's only been 1 to 15. So what does that mean? That's like if I went to a grocery store and I had a $5 bill. This is going to sound weird for you guys that are in America. If I had a $5 bill and I went to the grocery store, and in Canada, we call them loonies, right? A dollar coin. Maybe I'll use quarters instead, right? If I have a $5 bill and I go and I want to trade it in for quarters, how many quarters am I supposed to get? I'm supposed to get 20, right? If I made change properly. What if I went and gave them a $5 bill and they gave me 100 quarters back? Right? That's basically what we have today with the prices of gold to silver. Does that make sense? Why silver is more undervalued to gold? You know, you have this thing, if you had, you know, 1 ounce of silver invested, it would be, you know, the potential for it to go up would be a lot higher than the potential for gold. And, you know, that's why we've been encouraging people to start an investment plan. You know, look into buying physical metals, look into investing with vault storage. You know, it's important to look into different, you know, different options to diversify a little bit. You know, you don't want all your eggs in one basket. You want it to be a little bit diversified, right? But really, you know, I want to encourage you guys, if you haven't already, to start considering getting into precious metals, not because it's just another commodity that you can invest in. You know, it's not just another thing like oil that you can trade. It's not just another thing like, you know, I can trade potato futures, I can trade, you know, corn futures, I can trade coffee bean futures. I want you guys to understand that gold and silver are intended to be money. They're supposed to be money, right? They're not just another commodity that you can trade, that you can speculate on. They're literally money, right? So hopefully, you know, that answers all the questions that you know, we had at the beginning. Any questions that you guys had? There's like 95 things in the chat, so I'm just gonna catch up on that.
I think we're good. I was keeping up with that, but let's swap spots again.
Yeah.
Real quick. Let me steal the good chair
Okay.
for a second. I want you guys to blow up the chat for John, and I'm gonna stop sharing the screen here. Hand things back over. Okay, yeah, cool. We're gonna hand things back over to Philip, and then in terms of questions, right, we'll be able to answer any sort of questions that we missed in the chat as the call was going on. All right, and if you guys have any questions now, you can definitely feel free to ask, but I'll let let you guys do so in the chat.
All right, thank you, Donnie. Thank you, John. I can see that in the chat. We already have a question from Enoch. He said, who owns the Federal Reserve? So whenever you guys got time, you can have that. I also had another one that I wrote down from earlier on. I don't know if John mentioned it or if anyone saw, but it was talking about diamonds. So personally, I also know that the creation of silver has to do with the process being formed under pressure with salt and other minerals and stuff in the ground. So that is still constantly being remade naturally by our earth. Same with diamonds. Diamonds are caused under pressure, but man now makes diamonds themselves. So once again, if it can be essentially printed, if you can print diamonds, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, then essentially it's the same as currency, printed currency. But the other thing then I wanted to say is, here's a question for you, Don. Where does gold come from? How's gold created?
So, fun fact, there's actually an abundance of gold in asteroids. Gold is not something that is, it's foreign to Earth, right? Earth didn't have gold until there was, you know, some sort of a collision with asteroids, with meteors, right? So,
are you sure?
Yeah. There's a lot of information that you can find that gold is, you know, by definition, a cosmic material. And when it comes to, you know, where it actually it comes from, it's from space. So, you know, there's an asteroid, I think, that has a huge abundance of gold that's not actually it's within our solar system. I can't remember what exactly the asteroid's called, but you know, it's something to look into. Obviously, there is gold that's found here on Earth, but that's not it wasn't always like that. Okay, it's originally something that was, you know, from outer space.
So upon like doing like the research and just touching up on what Don said there, 100%, like, so that's one major difference right there between gold and how it stores value. Like, what are we going to say? Oh, let's just go find some asteroids in space, bring them down, pluck them like an apple from a tree. That isn't going to happen. And actually what I'd read also is that just like when a volcano explodes, you have lava, and then it forms physical crystals afterwards. I'd read that gold is actually from explosions of stars, and then it ends up settling into that matter, into the asteroids, etc. So now I'm just going to read questions from the chat for you if you want to go through them. We've got, who owns the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, so
that one, you can go back in the slideshow. There's like a
Yep. So we'll let me pull it up here before we share the screen. So this one right here, yeah.
No. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah, right here. Cool. So these are the shareholders, yeah.
Mhm.
So these are all the shareholders of the Federal Reserve, and there's other calls. I think there's some. I think there's a recording actually. We would have to do some digging, but where it talks a little bit more about some big names that I'm sure you guys have maybe heard of before or maybe not. But the Rothschilds family, right? Obviously, these are all major banking corporations, but who owns the banking corporations, right? It's in kind of following the money, a lot can really be, I guess you could say, dug up in terms of information. There is a recording actually on the Traders Paradise YouTube channel that's literally called "Following the Money" or "Following the Paper Trail." That link I'll drop in the chat here, but yeah, let me go ahead and do that. But yeah, in terms of any other questions, you can hit us with whatever.
Okay, hold on. Let me look at the chart.
Jesus is asking, this is perfect for you guys being distributors. Where's the best place to buy gold and silver physically?
Definitely. So we partnered with, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. That's the YouTube video that's following the paper trail. Check it out in your own time. So we partnered with International Gold Vault and Precious Metals International earlier. I was going to say this year, I guess last year, right? So from our experience, and I'll actually share my screen and kind of go into this with you guys just a little bit. And then any sort of questions you guys have, about the actual, platform or what have you, can definitely feel free to ask. So International Gold Vault, right? This is where we actually got connected with Rob. I met him through a student, one of the individuals that I was working with in terms of trading, right? He actually connected me with Rob. John and I have been big into, have been big into metals for a while. But International Gold Vault, this is the dealers that we partnered with, but we're actually working with the supplier of precious metals, which is Precious Metals International. Now in here, a couple of things I want to show you guys. Why is this one of the hands down best places to buy metals?
Someone asked about palladium. You can buy palladium and platinum on there as well.
Yeah, these are the 4 different precious metals you can purchase from Precious Metals International. And, there's a few things that I want you guys to write down as to why this is a motive when it comes to buying metals. Number 1, you have the option to either request delivery of the product directly to you, or you can, number 2, request vault storage. Okay. What is vault storage, right? Okay, bet. Yeah, it's cool. We'll be good in 7 minutes. Let's say you bought 100 ounces of silver, right? You can choose to have that delivered directly to you. I have silver right here. There's 10 ounce bars, 5 ounce bars, and 1 ounce coins that I have on hands. And then there's also, metals that I have stored in the vaults. The vaults, PMI is partnered with Brinks, IDS, Loomis, any of those vaults worldwide, we're able to store product in. So there's an IDS vault here in Mississauga that we went and picked up 125 ounces of silver from back in September, right? So there's vault storage, which is dope. The storage fee is super, super reasonable. But I would say probably the biggest thing is the pricing that you're getting here. There's no premiums and there's no commissions. So if you think about something like silvergoldbull.ca, right? For those of y'all that were like me and John, that we were, buying from that platform earlier last year, okay, they're charging anywhere between $3 and $5 premiums per ounce. So if we take a look at the TradingView chart for silver right now, silver is currently valued at around 27.28 per ounce. Okay. On PMI, the spread between buying and selling, right? We're seeing that the selling price is 27.29. The buying price is 27.35. That is hands down the closest thing that I've found to spot price, period. Okay. If anybody can find a platform that offers metals for that tight of a spread, literally no premium, okay, hit me up, let me know. But this is where we've been, blessed with the opportunity to become dealers. So we are official dealers for Precious Metals International and International Gold Vault. So to answer your question, short and simple, you can buy it through us. That is an option, right? You can reach out to us on social media about that. We got time for probably one more question.
Yeah, I was just
One more
looking through
question.
them. I just picked one. So if your questions weren't answered, just feel free to message either myself, Don, or John. This last question I'm gonna pick.
If you guys have more questions, just because we have to wrap up in a couple minutes for another call. There's I'll send a link to our metals group chat. And that's a great place to ask questions. We also have Rob in that group as well. So the guy from PMI, like from International Gold Vault, he's in that group as well. He'll be able to answer questions if you have questions for him. I just put a link in the chat.
Yeah.
So either myself, Don, or Rob could answer any questions you guys have in the future in that group chat.
Yeah, make sure to tap in with that group chat for sure.
So this last question quickly, because we have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Might be big, so if you can't answer this one this quick, then don't worry. But this was, how does an economy reset if inflation decreases the value of a currency or buying power? Example, investing in Zimbabwe. How does the economy reset?
Yeah, swap spots. We got like 2 minutes, guys. We got to hand over the Zoom to another individual. So
yeah. Okay. So for the person asking about how an economy would reset, I would recommend, first of all, for anyone that does want to learn more about gold and silver, Hidden Secrets of Money. And this is a series. You can click right there. This is another guy that's an expert in gold and silver. He wrote the best-selling book in how to invest in gold and silver. I have a PDF of that book. I can drop it in the metals chat if you guys are interested. But he made a series of 10 videos that's super informative. I'd really recommend that you check this out for more answers. But number 2 right here, 7 Stages of Empire. What he goes through in here is he compares the United States system that we have right now to the ancient Romans, because they went through the same cycle that we did. They had, they started off as a small nation. They used gold and silver coins as their money. Eventually, they got a bigger and bigger and bigger military, a bigger economy. They needed to have more and more spending. What they did back then is they clipped off the edges of their coins, melted that down, and made new coins with the little shavings that they had. Then they started debasing it the same way that we're doing with our silver coins today, mixing it with other metals. And eventually the coins had basically no precious metal content in them, and it caused a hyperinflation, and eventually the currency completely collapsed. Okay, there's a lot of different videos you can watch about hyperinflation as well. But a short answer for you for how an economy crashes or how a currency resets is in this image over here. So this pie chart, what happens to fiat currency, either hyperinflation, or the other option is the government votes to get off the currency, revalue their currency based around gold, and they switch back onto a gold standard. Right now, since most of the world is on fiat money, there's basically two options. Option 1 is a hyperinflation. If you want to know how that plays out, study what happened to Germany in the 1920s, study what's happened to Zimbabwe, what's happening in Venezuela. That is kind of what plays out. Okay, so
yeah, we got to cut.
Yeah, we got to end the call here. For people that want more questions answered, I'm going to send another Zoom link from our Traders Paradise Zoom in the metals chat. But thank you guys again for all your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we're sorry, we got to wrap up the call though for the next call. But if you guys do have questions, then tune into the other Zoom link. I'll drop it just now.
Awesome. We're gonna bounce. We're gonna drop a link in the metals chat for you guys to have more questions. Other than that, appreciate you again for having us on, brother. And much love to everybody that came out. More of these calls in the near future. Much love, everybody. See y'all on Wall Street Wednesday tonight at 8 p.m.
Easy, everybody. Have a good one. Cheers, John. Thanks,
Peace.
John.